Hi, thanks everyone. Thank you all for coming tonight. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land that we're speaking on tonight, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. I'm Wendy, I'm the Education Officer, and I hope everyone's really excited tonight because we've got a fantastic group of speakers who have all done their electives at really interesting and different places. Also speaking tonight is Catherine, our ARMS Exchange Officer, Hannah from the New High Material Aid Program, and also Katie, one of our sponsors from the Bank of Queensland. Emily, James, Bonnie, Kelly, Sue and Monica on the education team will also be presenting many of our speakers throughout tonight. So this is the journey that we're going to go on. So starting off close to home with Eamon doing his elective at Nhulunbuy in the Northern Territory, and Tessa doing hers at one of our close neighbours in the Asia Pacific in Fiji. Then we're heading to Europe with Michael at Oxford and Ida in Istanbul, Turkey. After dinner, we'll hear about the advantages of doing a local elective with Melanie and Thibi, and I hope you're all ready for a double elective extravaganza after dinner, as Thibi also spent his time in India, and Andy will be talking about his electives in South Africa, as well as with Essex and Hertz Air Ambulance Trust in the UK. We'll round up this journey in South America, in Lima, Peru who'll also have some extra information about how to make sure you go on an ethical elective. I hope everyone's prepared for this round the world trip. And we're starting off with our very first speaker, Eamon, who did his elective with Miwataj Aboriginal Health Service in Nhulunbuy.
Yeah, no, sure. All right, let's get started. So, hi everyone, my name's Eamon. Welcome to the Electives Night tonight. So just to begin with, I thought I'd sort of clarify a little bit about what I'm speaking about. So I went to Miwatch Aboriginal Health Co-op, and I've been lucky enough to go there each year throughout my degree. Now that's through the John Flynn placement program, which you guys might have heard a little bit about. And I thought, to be honest, because Northeast Arnhem Land, where I'm speaking about, is so far away from Melbourne and it's so expensive to get to, it's worth mentioning that I think this kind of trip really suits a John Flynn program. It's quite hard to get to in isolation. I think flights are generally $1,000 to $2,000 return. And so it's the kind of thing that if you can join on John Flynn, they'll support you completely through that program, and it just makes it sort of a more logical transition through your degree. So I thought I'd start by touching on the John Flynn program briefly and then speak a little bit about my experience up there and why I think it's a great place to visit. So the John Flynn Partnership Program is, you might have heard a little bit about it, sponsors you for 8 weeks of your degree in a rural health setting. Now that's typically 2 weeks of each year, but it can actually just be 2 sort of big month-long trips, or indeed a full 8 weeks. It's a fully funded program, so they pay for any flights, any accommodation, and they also give you a living bursary of about $400 a week. So it's quite useful in that way. You know, if you're studying full-time and don't have time to work much on the side, it can be a really good way to get out of Melbourne at the end of each year. So in terms of the application process, applications this year open on Monday, 29th of April, and they're open for a week, I think, from that point on. It involves a written application. It's pretty straightforward, and it's just questions around why you want to work in a rural or remote community. And from there, there's a separate application to get into the Northern Territory. So obviously spots are limited in the Northern Territory, and it's quite a sought after position. So it's worth sort of getting in early and trying to get that application done. And there's a Skype interview that follows that initial application that you then go on to do. So I just thought I'd mention my tips for trying to get into the Northern Territory. I think it's really worthwhile trying to make contact with a GP clinic such as Miwatch as soon as you've been accepted into the John Flynn sort of program as a whole. And from there, really emphasise to John Flynn why you want to be in a remote Aboriginal community. I think it's the kind of thing that if you're proactive about it, generally you can get into it. But if you sort of leave it until the last minute, it can be quite hard to get into the Northern Territory. So if this is something you're thinking about, I'd really encourage you to get proactive about it and sort of look into it now. So I'll go now on to my experience with Me Watch Aboriginal Health Service. So I suppose why Northeast Arnhem Land, just generally. And I chose it because it's a pretty rich cultural area. So Northeast Arnhem Land is the area circled in red, and it's been its own sort of semi-autonomous region for a number of years. So it's sort of the home of the land rights movement, which you guys might have heard a little bit about, home of the Bark petition against mining companies in 1963. And it's also home to an incredible arts and music sort of community. So, you know, it's brought up Yotha Yindi. It's currently home to the Gama Festival, which is a cultural festival that's run each year. And so it's, you know, for that reason, it's quite unique in the Northern Territory and in Australia as well. And the other thing I thought I'd mention is that it's quite removed from a lot of the damages seen across Northern Territory from the stolen generation. So the stolen generation never actually reached Northeast Arnhem Land. Now that means you get exposure to communities and a kinship system which are relatively intact and still, you know, quite culturally rich today, which is a pretty unique experience. And I'll touch on that a little bit later about the implications that that has in a healthcare setting. So I suppose Me Watch fits in underneath that umbrella of Northeast Arnhem Land, but it's an Aboriginal run health service that was set up in 1992. And the GP clinic itself has a really strong focus on the social determinants of health. So they only see local Aboriginal patients, and they try and include a really multidisciplinary team across their sort of healthcare provision. So I guess for that, it's really well suited for people who are interested in rural and remote healthcare, and just people interested in public health generally. So I'm just going to show a couple of photos from my trip up there. So they're a little bit pixelated on that screen, but I guess going to Me Watch provides you with an opportunity to see healthcare in a very different setting. You know, these remote Aboriginal communities are typically very impoverished and can be quite confronting for that reason, but they're also really rich in culture and a sense of sort of Aboriginal pride. For that reason, a placement there enables you to work with Aboriginal health workers firsthand. It also allows you to sort of observe the role that culture and this kinship system can play in practicing medicine. So, you know, it's quite a unique experience to speak to people who only speak in Yongamato, which is the local language up there, and to work with an interpreter to address their health concerns. And it's a privilege to be able to do that within Australia. So I think a lot of people often talk about going overseas for an elective and, you know, going to Africa or going to India. But the reality is there's very different cultures within our country that we can address and can learn from. And as Australians, I think it's really important that we do acknowledge the fact that Aboriginal Australians have really terrible health outcomes at the moment. So this is one step that can sort of increase our awareness around it. And I think that's a really positive thing. So yeah, I've just said here, the placement for me provided a huge amount of learning around Aboriginal culture and the kinship system that exists in Aboriginal culture. So that's sort of related to family and related to the wider community and their relationship with their environment. It also gave me an incredible awareness about the state of Aboriginal health in Australia. I mean, you see chronic diseases that you would see in Melbourne, but are significantly more severe. You're exposed to a lot of tropical infections like milioidosis, a lot of infectious diseases like scabies, and rheumatic fever, sadly, is still really prevalent in this community. And so that, I mean, will further your studies and your education, but it's also just, again, important to realise that that is happening on our doorstep, and it's something that we should be trying to really actively improve. So this is the clinic in Yirrkala. So it's quite a small clinic. there's sort of 3 or 4 GP rooms and then quite a number of nurses who help out on site with that. And as part of the trip, they expect you to do some degree of parallel consulting. So it's a really good opportunity to practice your history taking and your examination skills, and to undertake some simple procedures. There is a hospital in Gove, which is around the corner from Yirkala, but you know, a lot of stuff comes through the GP clinic that would probably go to an emergency department if it was in Melbourne. So that can be a really interesting and challenging thing in and of itself. So I was just going to touch on how the trips have been for me. So I've gone 3 times now, and I'll go once more at the end of this year. They've been amazing, but also really challenging. So there's an incredibly generous local community there. They got me involved in the local footy team from the start, took us fishing, and to visit local waterholes and beaches, which have all been beautiful. And, you know, beaches like this that are relatively untouched and that have incredible fishing and are an incredible spot to sit and watch the sunset, obviously staying out of the water with crocs and stingers. There's also a JCU campus, so James Cook University campus, which provides accommodation. It provides access to bikes and a car, and it's a really great way to meet other students while you're on placement. Given the mining lease, so there's quite a significant mine nearby owned by Rio Tinto. The actual town itself is really well catered for, so there's a large Woolies department and a number of cafes and restaurants and stuff, which means that some of those creature comforts that you might miss in a rural trip are catered for. And just in terms of challenges, I've touched on the poverty and disease that exists in a lot of these Aboriginal communities, but further to that, you know, there is societal dysfunction. There are issues in the community, which can be confronting, but it's, again, something that increases your awareness, and I think that's an important thing as young Australians. So I'll finish off by touching on a few recommendations that I have for anyone who's going on a rural trip. Take the chance to learn about different roles in healthcare. I think often in Melbourne, we're fixated upon tertiary healthcare without actually acknowledging the role that primary health plays across Australia. So through the Me Watch program, you're able to go on community visits with Aboriginal health workers, social workers, nurses and psychologists, and that can be really confronting but also really enriching for your studies to be, you know, gain some insight into what their roles are in a remote community. And the other thing I was just going to touch on, and I think this applies to a lot of the presentations you'll hear tonight, be patient around the cultural restrictions that this kind of trip can offer. So yes, you won't be able to see some patients. So personally for me, I wasn't able to see a lot of female patients given cultural sort of norms around that. And also you just sort of need to gain the trust of a lot of these patients. So you've got to remember that in Aboriginal Australia, healthcare hasn't always been such a positive, or it hasn't played such a positive role in people's lives. So, you know, if you look at the stolen generation, a lot of the time, Aboriginal mothers had their children taken away in the hospital, and they associate the hospital with that kind of traumatic experience. Traditionally, hospitals have been a place where Aboriginal people have gone and died and they haven't come home healthy. And so there is certainly a lot of stigma around healthcare in this community and in a lot of communities across Australia. So I guess that's something to be aware of, and to be patient about that, you know, patients might not open up straight away to you. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to touch on. Have you got any questions for me, guys? Right, I think we'll move on.
Thanks so much, Aidan.
Thanks.
So our next speaker is Tessa, who did her elective at the Fiji Village project.
Which one is it? That one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi everyone, so I'm Tessa, I'm in MD3 and I did my elective in Fiji, in Suva, the capital, in January this year, and it was part of the Fiji Village project, which is a program that's been running for a number of years. It originally started with students, not just in medicine, but also nursing, dental, and allied health students in Australia, New Zealand and Fiji all coming together and wanting to run a program that gives exposure to healthcare in Fiji, and particularly community healthcare. So that means that 1 week of the project is spent in the hospitals doing placements, but the other week is spent in a remote village, providing sort of community healthcare, health screening, and things like that. So if you kind of aren't sure, I guess, what aspect you want to focus on, or like you're interested in public health, this is a really good opportunity because it gives you a broad mix of different things. So the first week we spent at Colonial War Memorial Hospital, which is the main tertiary hospital for all of Fiji. So we had rotations through emergency, surgery and obstetrics. And I think this is a really great experience, not just to get further clinical experience in general, but to see what healthcare is like in a reasonably resource limited setting. So just like some of the things that you'd notice of like, you have to bring your own hand sanitizer because they don't have enough, or one of their autoclaves broke, so non-urgent surgeries were cancelled and they were only doing emergencies. So like sterile gloves being used instead of a drain because they ran out. So it's quite interesting just to see how people cope in a setting like that and the sort of improvisations that you have to do. So I'll just run through briefly what the 3 different rotations were like, and then I'll talk about the village as well, and just the kind of other activities that we got to do. So surgery, so that, I don't know, was quite different for me than I'd experienced at St. Vincent's last year. So Fiji has one of the highest rates of death and morbidity from diabetes in the world. It's got a huge problem with NCDs, or non-communicable diseases. So pretty much every day there they had above-knee amputations. Like that was just a routine operation. And because people with diabetes tend to present so late, so it's a really good opportunity to see something that we do have in Australia, but not to the same extent and normally not that progressed. So they had a whole theatre, just like the septic theatre for debridement, amputations, just all sorts of complications from diabetes. There's also, if you're interested in obstetrics, they have like C-sections. Every hour you hear a baby crying from the other theatre, which was kind of nice. And it was just incredible to see the skill of the surgeons. So, for example, I was shadowing one, I guess the equivalent of a registrar, and he was on call not just for like plastics, because the only plastic surgeon in Fiji was on leave, but he was also on call for neurosurgery, ENT, cardiothoracics. He'd had to learn all of that, and often like there is no consultant to contact because it's such a small country. So just to learn from someone who has such a breadth of skill was an incredible experience. The emergency department kind of felt similar to here at first, like similar size, similar kind of rate of patients moving through, until I realised that there were only 3 doctors in the entire emergency. And it was a great opportunity. They gave us our own room to consult, so we could see patients. We got to write the notes. They would come in and just check that everything we'd done was okay and follow up anything that we'd missed. And it was a great opportunity again to see kind of later presentations of typical things in Australia, but also some tropical diseases, so like dengue, leptospirosis, things like that. And obstetrics was, I think, the highlight of pretty much everyone's just entire 2 weeks. So you get to spend a day in the labour ward, and most people saw sort of 6 or 7 births in one day. And for context, I think that's how many we were meant to see in our entire obstetrics rotation here. And the midwives are incredible at teaching, and they get you to assist with the delivery, cut the cord, hold the baby as it's coming out. Yeah, it was just like oh, it was just incredible. Like newborn babies, oh, they're so cute. So yeah, another thing, like they didn't have epidurals because that would sort of mean too many resources to use. So like pain relief was just opioids and reassurance, as one of the midwives put it to me. And often they have one labour room with sort of 10 beds, and they have 2 delivery suites, and often like too many people would be giving birth at once because they just have so many women coming through from all around the country that like people would just give birth in the labour room. Yeah, and this is a photo. So I thought when I walked in, there were 2 babies in that incubator, and I was like, oh, that's so cute, like twins, how amazing. And the midwife was like, oh, no, like this is our incubator, and put the baby that we were currently carrying in with them. So they're all snuggled up together in the single incubator. So yeah, like incredible experience at the hospital. But then I guess if you're more public health minded or like GP, community outreach, that sort of thing, the village is probably the highlight. So we spent, every year they pick a different village and do a bunch of different healthcare activities. So we were in a village that's sort of a 50-minute drive from Suva, the capital, and about 20 minutes from the nearest town, which really doesn't sound like much. Like you drive for 50 minutes here and you're still in Melbourne. But like it was a completely different sort of lifestyle to in the city. Still very much traditional, like a lot of growing their own food, and there were plenty of people who, you know, didn't work in the town and would rarely leave the village. So the village had 273 people with 3 flushing toilets for all of them. And they rely on spring water for clean water throughout the year, which in times of drought can get low. So sometimes there's issues with access to clean water. So as part of the project, we raise funds for 2 water tanks to go in, which will be able to get them through those times of drought. You don't put them in yourself, like you just raise money for the water tanks. And yeah, so it was like we get welcome to the village. There was a traditional carver ceremony, lots of dancing, like really hospitable sort of group of people. And yeah, so it's a great way to kind of meet people in Fiji and just get to know like a sort of completely different lifestyle and like culture to your own. Yeah, so the main activity that we ran there was health screening. So basically cardiovascular screening. So we take the blood pressure, BMI, blood glucose, and if there were any issues, we'd sort of give like general advice, but also advise them to see a doctor. And we had some doctors coming throughout the project so they could get proper consultations. And the highlight of this as a student was, so we went to the community hall and people would come and get their health screening done there. But there are also people who for various reasons couldn't make it to the town centre. So we basically did home visits. So that was walking through, like this is us kind of walking to someone's house, like through lots of kind of hills, and you'd get to be invited into their homes and they'd talk about the health problems and you'd be able to do the screening. And it was just a real privilege to be invited into lots of people's houses and yeah, see what it was like. And this is, so obviously we're not dentistry students, so this wouldn't be us, but this is the mobile dental clinic that they set up in the hall. So I guess I've never seen like dental procedures, so that was really interesting. They did lots of like tooth extractions, and the dental student was just standing there, like he was just, like I asked him how it was going and he just said in this kind of really low voice, like, oh, I'm never going to see anything like this again. Like he loved it. So apart from the cardiovascular screening, we also did some basic health education, particularly with kids. So like hand hygiene, brushing your teeth. If you're interested in peds, like a very large proportion of the population in the village is children. And so you can just spend all your time with them if you want to, which is great. See if I've missed anything. Yeah, so apart from the hospital and the going to the village, there were lots of other kind of social events and just things around Fiji. I think one of the things that people enjoyed the most was just being able to meet medical students from Australia, all around New Zealand, and from Fiji as well. And that was particularly good in that, like, because we had local medical students, they could give us an insight and they could help us out around the hospital. because that's where they are like all year. So, you know, we had like a New Year's Eve party. We went and visited a waterfall. Like tourism wise, the highlight was driving on the way back to Nandi where the airport is. We stopped at this just pristine beach and all ran off the pier and went swimming, and it was just stunning. Yeah, so like if you just want to see Fiji as well, it's a great opportunity. Would definitely recommend like staying an extra week and doing snorkeling or something, which I didn't do and I regret. I guess like in terms of like logistical things to know, we stayed at where the medical students stay year round, so they all get accommodation at kind of like this, it's like a hostel like right across the road from the hospital, which is really convenient. And as part of staying in the accommodation, they give you all your meals and they transport you everywhere. So they picked us up from the airport and dropped us off again. And yeah, like it was just all organised for us, which was great. What else? Yeah, I mean, like everyone, like English is like a language in Fiji, one of the major languages, but there is a little bit of there can be a language barrier in the village. I mean, most were really proficient in English, but the health conversations were in the local language, and sometimes in the emergency department, or you'd have patients that only spoke Fijian or Hindi, but like it's not really an issue. In terms of funding, like you can get the Global Mobility Scholarship, which gives you about $1,000, so that would cover like flights, because everything's included with accommodation. I think it's like the program's like $800 all up. And if you're a St. B student, they have a scholarship specifically for medical students doing electives in the Pacific region. So yeah, like you can get funding for it as well. Yeah, so applications will be open from the 14th or 15th of April to the 5th of May. So just check out their website, look up Fiji Village Project Australia. I'd really recommend you apply. It's a fantastic program, a great way to meet people. Obstetrics was like the best day of my life. Yeah, like it was so much fun. And yeah, really good, particularly if you're public health minded. So yeah. And if you've got any questions about the program, you can email me as well. Did anyone have any questions? Thanks.
Thanks so much, Tessa and Eamon. So I've heard from two really wonderful speakers. I'm sure we're all thinking about how do I apply for an elective? What's the process like? Well, we've got just the right person for you. We have Catherine, our exchange officer, and she'll be talking about how to organise an elective through the IFMSA exchange program.
Just share and select the new PowerPoint.
So hi everyone, I'm Catherine. I'm your IFMSA local exchange officer for this year. Just a show of hands, does anyone here know what the IFMSA is? Okay, so a few of you. Basically, the IFMSA is the International Federation of Medical Students Association, and it's a huge body of medical students that does some really cool, important stuff. For example, representing medical students at the WHA, the World Health Assembly. And through them, AMSA participates in the exchange program, which connects us to over 100 countries, and a lot of students are part of that too. So because this exchange is all organised, so the clinical, elective, accommodation and food are all organised, it means that you can do what's most important to you. So that's learning about a specialty of your choice and being able to meet people from all around the world. And the feedback that we've gotten from people who have come back from this program is that they've really enjoyed the social aspect, as there are a lot of programs that are organised for you, whether that's in the clinical hospital or the medical schools of around the world. And that comes to $990 for a 4-week elective. And to put that in perspective, some hospitals charge $1,000 for a medical elective on top of a $200 application fee. So $990 for the elective and accommodation and food is really quite a good price. And all you have to worry about is your travel expenses, visas, and spending money. So for most students, you go in the summer break from December to January, but when you go, whether it's December or January, depends on where you want to apply to, as different hospitals have different policies. So make sure to go onto the IFMSA exchange conditions for each country to see when they're available and if they have a specialty that you're interested in. So this changes from year to year, but for the 2019 to 2020 period, these are the countries that are on offer. So again, go to the exchange conditions to see if they have a program that aligns with what you want. The application is a really simple process. It's just a Google form with your basic details and your motivations for applying. And you can put up to 6 country preferences, and we process that through de-identified applications that we read through. And what's most important is that you've considered your response so that we know that you can represent AMSA in the best way possible. And students who have hosted incoming exchange students do get preference. But again, it's really about like your passion behind applying for this exchange. So why should I host? You get preference for the exchange of your choice. And it's not a lot of money, it's $400. But all you have to offer is a private room and 5 hot meals a week. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me or visit the AMSA page. And that's the link I was talking about with the exchange conditions. The application forms will be put up on the Common Room page and on the website potentially as well. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine. So our next speaker is Michael, who's gone to Oxford for his elective.
Hi everyone, I'm Michael, I'm an ND4. I went to Oxford in January. Basically the first 2 electives are pretty wholesome in what they're about. Mine was completely self-serving, so just get ready for that. Also, just before I start, if there's one thing you can take away from this, it's that if you've even thought about going to Oxford, just apply. Like I've literally failed things and I still got in. So if I can get in, you know, pretty much anyone has a shot. So moving on, why would you want to go to Oxford? Well, there's many reasons why you want to go. You might like the old stuff. So this is the Duke Humphreys Library, which is the forbidden section of the library in Harry Potter. And it's one of the many old / Harry Potter things that you can go see in Oxford. So it's, you know, how basically everything in Australia that's more than 200 years old is, you know, collapsed. Most things in Oxford are actually quite old and quite historic. So it's good to go visit. You might like British accents and British people. This was apparently Emma Watson's school, which was on the walk between the hospital and the town. And to answer your question, yes, it was weird taking a photo of a random girls' high school on the walk down to the city. Why did I want to go? Well, I saw this and, you know, I thought, where would that look really good? So, you know, if you want to boost your CV a little bit and just give yourself a little bit of an edge, or at least what I hope will give me a bit of an edge and not make me look like a complete arse during internship, is this. So the medical stuff. Well, I'm sure you've heard a lot about the NHS. Basically, it's like what would happen if you took Australia, took all the private stuff and the money out of it, and then worked everyone really, really hard and gave them nothing in return. So, you know, it's a great time. But they all love it there. It's like, you know, people at the Epworth think they get a good experience because they've only heard about how good the Austin is, but they've never actually been there. But the thing is, the main difference is they get paid based on a salary and not a caseload. So they do a lot more complex stuff over there. So whereas, you know, word for word, a consultant said, in Australia, consultants just want to run off to their private rooms and make money. We actually want to stay and care for our patients. So if you do like to see complex things, it is a good chance to go. Unlike Fiji and the Northern Territory, I think it was, where you do a lot of generalist stuff, this is like super, super subspecialized. So I was at the orthopedic unit, and basically they had a team for every limb. So, you know, I spent a day on a hand surgery list. Never want to see a hand again. I'm done with that. This is the hospital. So there's 3 campuses in Oxford. This is the John Radcliffe. It's the main centre where you'll be doing most of your stuff. Basically everything apart from orthopedics and a few other things get done here. It's very large. There's multiple wings, you know, everything's there. It's a tertiary centre, so they refer from a big chunk of the countryside, which is big for the UK, but very small for Australia. This is where I was. This is the Nuffield Orthopaedic Centre. This is basically a hospital dedicated to orthopedics. And there's another hospital called the Churchill that no one really goes to because, yeah, it's just really old and stuff. And also research. So one of the things that they do push is that if you want to do research while you're over there, they're really, really supportive. Apparently they're the #1 medical school because everyone just cares about research and they pump out publications like they're going out of fashion. I had one of the guys that I was there with pumped out an 11,000 word lit review in the 4 weeks that he was there. Apparently he's trying to get that published. So if you want to actually do work and stuff, it's a great opportunity. But yeah, the gist is if you're interested in a certain specialty, this is a good way to get a good taste of everything that subspecialty has to offer. Okay, the non-medical stuff. So obviously there's a lot of old buildings. This is the John Radcliffe camera. It doesn't take photos. It's a library. It's, yeah, very old, like everything else in Oxford. You can't actually take photos in there, so I can't actually show you what it looks like on the inside. But it's like, the vibe is that you actually want to study in there. Like I walked in there and somehow managed to pump out some work that I didn't even know I had. So it's a very good environment to do work in. Otherwise, this is the Great Hall of Christchurch College, which is also the dining hall of Harry Potter. There's like 30 colleges. They all look like this. They're all just have so much money, like so much money. And yeah, if you do get to stay at one of the colleges, it is a very different experience. Unlike college here, it's actually nice. I have been to college here, so I get to say that. The food's actually good as well. It's not just curries every day of the week. Otherwise, around town, there's a lot of old stuff as well, like pubs. So this is a pub that was established in 1200, I think. And you'll kind of realize that a lot of British people are a bit eccentric. You see these things on the wall. So they're just the ends of ties. And apparently the story goes, one of the bartenders in the 1400s used to just like really like ties. So whenever he saw what he liked, he'd go and like talk to the guy with a pair of scissors behind his back and then grab the tie and cut it off and stick it on his wall. And he'd repay them with 2 pints of beer, which is, you know, worth it, I think. So that's another great spot to go. Another one of the pubs has this sign on it. It was established in 1400. This sign here says that Bob Hawke, our esteemed Prime Minister, managed to scull a yard of beer in 11 seconds, which is apparently all Aussies are known for over in Oxford. So you better be able to drink if you go there. A yard is 1.4 litres, just FYI. And also this sign is saying Bill Clinton apparently tried to smoke a joint but didn't inhale, and apparently he's famous for that over there. So yeah, there's a lot of history, a lot of things to see. And the good thing is they give you a student card, which basically lets you in everywhere for free. So most colleges, if you go there as a tourist, you get charged about £6, which if you apply the conversion rate, which I'll tell you all about later, just is soul crushing. So you can get to go into all the colleges, all the libraries for free. The pubs obviously aren't free, they have to work business. Otherwise, it's also quite easy to take weekend trips from the UK because everything's so small. So there were people who went to Edinburgh. We went to Stonehenge and Bath, and one guy went to Paris for the weekend. I think he just missed the yellow vest rights, which he was really happy about. So it's a good chance to go all over the UK, depending on how long you have there. it's, yeah, nice base to go from. And otherwise, the Oxford students have like their own sort of subculture on their own, if you will. This is what the dress they wear to exams and OSCEs. It's called subfusc. And they have a lot of random traditions like this. And the Friday before I left, the 6th years had just finished their final exams. So as you do, you know, they organised like a party. They call them bops over there because they're cool like that. And, you know, of course, because they've been wearing this to their exams for 6 years, they decided to make the theme Sexy Subfusc, which was basically people like this in various stages of unbuttoning, which is apparently sexy in Britain. So where do you stay? This communist-looking block is where I stay. It's the on-site hospital accommodation. So if you're looking that way, about 100 meters behind you this way is where the hospital actually is. It's great for rolling out of bed 5 minutes before you need to be in hospital, although I had a 15-minute walk that way, so I had to roll up a little bit earlier. The rooms are pretty much what you'd expect from looking at the outside. They're arranged as a 7-room unit with a kitchen at the end. The laundry is in another hallway, so, you know, doing laps between these blocks at 10 o'clock in your shorts because you ran out of laundry is always good fun. But otherwise, the elective flat itself, there's about 7 people who stay there and they're all elective students, so it's actually not a bad option to stay in. You do spend a lot of time with the other elective students. I played a lot of cards. Also, it's free. It's just kind of awkward asking the elective organizer being like, can I stay at the free accommodation when you're not really meant to know about it? So play your cards while you might get to stay there. Otherwise, this is your other option. This is Green Templeton College. It's the honorary college you get admitted to once you go to Oxford. You get to stay on this campus. The rooms are a bit nicer. The grounds are a lot nicer, but it's about a 40-minute walk or a 15-minute bus from the actual hospital itself. You can stay at any of the other colleges. It just depends on if they have space or not, and it's also varying degrees of expensive. So this is about £500 for the month, but Christchurch and stuff can get up to about 700. And you'll kind of realise when you start emailing people, I spammed 30 colleges. I got 3 replies because they're all full, which is pretty understandable. Otherwise, the other options are one person stayed on top of a pub. We never saw her. Other people stayed in Airbnbs and stuff. So there's varying options depending on how much you're willing to pay. This is Christchurch. Look how nice it looks compared to that. Stuff to beware of. So each rotation has various descriptions on their website. The problem is, even though Oxford has quite a good reputation, they still feel the need to advertise like they're a drugstore going out of business for the last 15 years. You see how it says, like, students will spend times on the ward and clinic at the knock and spend time at trauma emergency. It sounds pretty good, right? It's like, you know, you'll be in there, you'll be doing stuff. And then, you know, you'll take part in teaching. Like, you can go if there's an interesting lecture. Yeah, no. What they actually meant was, I was attached to the 5th years, and they do an 8-week rotation in a random collection of subjects like orthopedics, rheum, and ED. I was there for 4 weeks. They had 3 weeks of front-loaded lectures, and their orthopedics was in week 5 and 6. You don't need to be that good at math to realise I'd have a shit time if I stayed. So I basically just left them and found my own surgeries to go to, but that took a week. So that kind of meant that I didn't really do as much as I would have wanted to, and I didn't really get the chance to go do any research because I didn't really see a doctor twice until the 2nd Thursday. So if you do select a rotation that's a bit vague like this, make sure you do confirm with the elective coordinator, because if you email them and tell them what you want to do, they'll be pretty accommodating. It's just hard to be accommodating at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning when you have 4 weeks there. So partly my fault, partly, mostly theirs. Stonehenge was just the most disappointing thing I've ever seen in my life. It's like some guys played a game of Jenga and left it there for a while, and then people decided to rope it up and make you pay. The food so the UK is quite expensive. Like, the conversion rate's about 2 to 1, right? And the thing is, you go to a pub for a meal and they'll charge you £12 for a pie. And that sounds all right until you realise you just paid $25 for a pie. So you end up eating a lot of this, and I'm so sick of curries now. So that's one thing. If you do go there, don't eat any curries for the 6 months previously, because you won't want to eat it again for the 6 months after anyway. But yeah, watch out for that. Also, British weather. The most common thing I had said to me was, why are you here right now? The weather's so nice in Australia. And that's really true, because it was really cold and miserable, and you kind of miss out on a lot of things that are highlights of Oxford. So you miss out on the rowing races between Cambridge and Oxford. You miss out on the bumps, which is where they all line up the rowing boats and try and hit each other off the water. You miss out on punting, which is like the gondola thing on their river. So because we only get breaks during sort of December, January, you're going to go during the middle of winter. It's going to be really cold. You're going to not feel your fingers for 50% of the time. But even still, it's a great time, so go. The application process. So everything's on that website. You need 2 referees, you need a personal statement, you need a transcript, and you need a glowing endorsement from your clinical dean. So if you're applying this year, you'll be applying for the end of next year. So unfortunately for the MD3s in the room, you probably won't be able to go. Are there any? Oh, cool. So they open around, I think it was like July-ish, and they close in about September, October. And they say that they all decide on one day in November. I've gone really far over time, haven't I? No? Okay, it's fine. So they decide on one day in November. They tell you they told me it was November the 17th, and in classic medical school style, they told me 3 weeks later. So the thing is, you get confirmed that you're accepted first, and then you get your rotations about a month later. After that, it's probably a good idea to start organising your accommodation and stuff quickly. Otherwise, you miss out on the college and stuff. But it's pretty involved. You do have to mail paper copies over and all that sort of stuff, but it's not too bad all in all. So tips, once again, just apply. If you want to go, just go. It looks good on the CV, I think. Get everything ready early, because if you've ever asked for a reference from anyone who's above a registrar position, you know you'll probably have to email them about 20 times and make a sacrifice at the full moon to actually get them to email you back. So do prepare that early. Make sure they'll say good things about you too. Confirm what you're actually doing on your rotation as well, so you don't end up like what I had to deal with. If you want to stay at a college, email them repeatedly and email them early. You get a form saying who to contact. It was last updated about 3 years ago, so I emailed like 4 people who retired, so that was fun. And if you do want to do research, just look up who works there, and then if there's anyone who's doing anything in a field that you're interested in, just email them early and set up a topic so you can actually do stuff and jump in straight away. And yeah, if you have any questions, please email me. The end.
Thanks very much. So our next speaker is Ida, who did her elective at Serapasa Hospital in Istanbul, Turkey.
Thank you. All right, guys, so my presentation is not going to be that entertaining, and I'm already breaking the table. Great. So yeah, my elective took place in Turkey. My name's Eda, I'm an MD4, and I did my elective at the end of last year, so it was in December, I think December 10, for a couple of weeks. Yeah, so I did it in the main city, not the capital. So capital's Ankara, but I did it in Istanbul, which is a great place for visiting as a tourist. So this is basically just an overview of what I'm going to be talking about today to keep us on track. And I'm just going to have heaps of different photos scattered around because I went to town on taking photos while I was in Turkey. Take a camera with you if you're into that kind of stuff. Why I chose Turkey? I'm Turkish background originally, so I do speak a bit of Turkish, and I personally didn't want language to be a barrier when I was going on placement. So originally I was looking at places like the UK, New Zealand, Canada, but I also had the issue of I was applying quite late. So for example, with Oxford, you have to apply a good year in advance. I applied, say, 2 months in advance to my placement. And yeah, that was mainly because of my family situation, and also I wasn't sure if I could go or not. So Turkey's a great place to go if you're looking for a last minute elective and you really want to do one. And yeah, I heard a lot of good things about how much Turkey lets you get involved. So I heard that Turkey was like really chill, and they're just like, oh, go do the surgery. So I was just like, oh, this is awesome. So let's do Turkey. And I also wanted to see what it would be like in a non-Western country. So as our previous speakers have said, you don't really have to travel too far or go overseas to get a different cultural vibe. However, I was pretty intent on going somewhere that wasn't like mainstream Western country and seeing how they practice medicine differently, particularly because Turkey is, I guess, still considered like a developing country, even though Istanbul's quite well developed. So I'll talk a bit more about what the differences were there. Just as a side note on the public versus private. So in Turkey, the public hospitals are a lot more different than the public hospitals here, whereas their private institutions are very westernized. So it's more like an American hospital if you were to go to a private one. So personally, I wouldn't want to have my surgery done in a public hospital in Turkey, just because I got to witness it and I was like, maybe not in terms of like sterile fields and stuff. And yeah, I wanted to have a holiday, and my family did as well. So they were like, let's go to Turkey. We haven't been in like years. And that's why I chose Turkey. The application process is actually quite easy. There's this great website called Turkey Electives, not hard to forget, or not hard to remember, sorry. So you pop onto their website. I went on it recently. They've really revamped it. You just make an account, and then on their application site, you just have to put in your details. You choose which department you'd like to do. You don't actually choose your hospital though. And then you just pop in your preferred dates. So you get to choose, I think, 3 preferences as to which department. So my top 3 were general surgery, I think thoracics, because we don't get a lot of exposure to that here, and plastics, I think. But yeah, I think you're really likely to get your first preference if it's during the time that they're offering it. And it takes them about, yeah, this is what it looks like when your application form's submitted. It took about 2 weeks, I think, for them to get back to me. So it's not a long waiting period. So you can look at booking your airfares, looking for accommodation. So it's a really good place to go if you're looking for, if you've been putting your elective off for a long time like me, and you've only got a couple months to figure out what you're doing. What you need to supply in terms of what you need to supply to the hospital. So again, this was all done through Turkey Electives, it's actually run by people that used to work with the IFMSA. So they've got a lot of experience navigating medical students to different hospitals and things, but it's not directly with the hospital. That's another option. You can email them directly, but I didn't get responses from some of them. And one of the responses just sounded like something they Google translated Turkish to English, and I couldn't understand what they were saying. So yeah, Turkey Electives is a really good option to just streamline your application process. They need your letter of support from your dean, which is basically just shoot your clinical school an email and say, I want to do an elective. Can you just provide me a letter of support? And they're very happy to provide that to you. Photo of your student card, motivation letter. I just wrote, I'm really interested in surgery and would love to see it in another country. Proof of your vaccinations, especially your hepatitis status. They definitely want you to have insurance, medical insurance. And the application fee was only 150 euros. I say only because I've heard the American ones are like a couple of thousand or something. So it's equivalent to about 400 Aussie dollars. Now, I put this all in caps, the check DFAT or smart traveler, because when I took a look, you have to look at the risk level of where you're going. And this wasn't, I don't think this was going to be a concern, but it turned out that Turkey was fine. Istanbul was an issue. It was on reconsider your travel. So I had to actually contact the university and be like, I have been to Turkey before. I think I'll be safe. And they just approved it. It was fine. A week before I left, the status actually went down. But that brings up a really valid point, especially in today's political climate of, is it safe to travel to Turkey, which I don't think was an issue originally because I've been to Turkey a few times and because of my background. But it's been raised by a few of my friends as, oh, you know, I was planning to go, but I didn't go because I heard things on the news and stuff. So if you're worried about personal safety, main cities like Istanbul, Ankara, Izmir, like those kind of areas are probably very, very safe. Don't go to the border where there's Syria and stuff. Like, I don't know why you do that. They're the ones that are kind of on really high red alert. Just stick to probably the European side of it, which is about 3% of Turkey. Anyway, so what Melbourne Uni needs. Now, I wanted to bring this up not because it relates specifically to my Turkish elective, but because I wasn't aware of the forms that you're meant to submit before you go on your elective. I just thought, hey, I organise it and it's done. But you do have to provide Melbourne University with an application form which you submit to your clinical school before you go on your elective. So make sure you do that. And afterwards, you just fill out a reflection assessment form. These are all online. So if you just Google UniMelb elective forms, there's like a whole page with all of them there. But don't forget it, please, because you also have a supervisor form. What to take, I'm just going to skim over these. So check the weather. Like I mentioned before, I think on the little brief overview on Facebook, it's the opposite season as Australia. So it was December, it was Australia's summer, it was winter in Turkey. It was the start of winter. So that snow that you see, that was probably towards the end of my 4 weeks in Turkey, although I only did 2 weeks elective. So it doesn't really rain, but it gets freezing cold. I mean, it doesn't snow too much, but it gets really, really cold. So I would suggest packing warm gear. I flew around a lot while I was in Turkey. It's a great place to go interstate. Like a lot of friends of mine went to Cappadocia. They go around. I went to Antalya, which it was very warm. It was like 25 degrees in winter. So I was kind of like at the beach all the time. And I would just got into the habit of packing because we're always on the go. So white lab coat. In Turkey, in the hospitals, unlike here, everyone wears a white lab coat. That's what distinguishes a doctor from patients. And I'm going to go talk about that a little bit more too. There is quite you won't say a patriarchy, but there's a division between you're the doctor and this is the patient. And medical students, I thought, would be the ones that would be neglected, but doctors take really good care of medical students. I felt like I was getting teaching all the time, like I was VIP. He would see a patient and then completely forget that the patient was there or ignore them and start teaching me things. And the patient's kind of just standing there in the clinic going, should I go? And the doctor kind of looks at me and is like, you're still here? Like, why? And yeah, so there was a really big kind of like a status difference with how they treat them. And that white lab coat kind of just adds to that. And medical students wear it too, so make sure you have one. They told me to bring scrubs, but you don't need it. They just provide it in before you go into surgery, so that's all fine. In terms of costs, so this is very logistical and very money oriented, but visa, look into that early. Don't leave your visa to the last minute. I don't need one, so I'm not sure what the costs are. Airfares, you're looking at well above $1,200. So when I bought it, it was about $1,600 return. So it is a pricey trip. So I would recommend looking at going to maybe other countries because it's like close to Greece, close to Germany, Spain, like it's pretty much very close to Europe and Asia. If you want to use it as like a center and go off, similar to Michael was saying about UK. So Turkey Electives people actually contacted me about accommodation and asked, do you need it? And luckily they had a 3-bedroom apartment for me, which was about a 5-minute stroll down to the hospital. That was huge for me because I travel about 1 to 1.5 hours every morning trying to get to the Austin. So being able to wake up, like literally half an hour before and walk 5 minutes to the hospital, it takes me a long time to get ready. It was just amazing. I was just like, this is so good. And it came to about $80 a night because we were there for 3 weeks. So it was super cheap. But you can probably just look at local apartments and Airbnb if you need it, if Turkey Electives didn't have accommodation. The cost of living, so your daily expenses in Turkey are super cheap because $1 Aussie dollar is about 4 of their money. It's about 3.8. So everything was super cheap. Like you'd get a fish wrap and it'd probably be about 10 lira, which comes to what, $4? And that's just like a full meal. If you wanted to dine somewhere a bit fancier, you're probably looking at paying maybe $15 to $20 for a really big meal. So it's super, super cheap. And they have public transport options. we don't get student cards, so the hospital doesn't give you any sort of ID. I had nothing that was identifying me as a medical student apart from my white lab coat. And I didn't put stethoscope into the what to bring, only because I was doing general surgery and surgeons don't use stethoscopes. So if you're doing like a medical or an ED, take a stethoscope with you. But yeah, it's all very easy to get around. Taxis are probably the go-to for transportation other than trains and trams, but the hospital is located really close to trains and trams as well. So this is just going to be a bunch of pictures of food. I really hope you're not hungry or that you guys are getting food afterwards. But I literally ate my way through Turkey. I gained about 4 kilos. And I was walking every day 15 minutes at a tram stop and I still gained weight. So like traditional foods, like you go there and you'll have a gözleme and it just tastes amazing even though it's like $2. And then you'll have a baklava, which is probably like 50 cents or something, whereas over here it's like insanely expensive. And yeah, they do delivery like Uber Eats through this app called UMMSS, and yeah, we just went to town on it. Food was so good. I can't tell you how good food was. Like the quality is amazing. It's super cheap. And that's like Maraş dondurma, which is Turks are kind of famous for how they do, like they ring a bell and they trick everyone and you can't hold the ice cream. It was winter and I still had it. It was really good. Yeah, so I ate a lot of food. In terms of the actual hospital, yeah, the location, like I mentioned, is a really good place because it's really central to everywhere. It's kind of like the center of Istanbul. There's cats everywhere, and apparently that's what Cerrahpaşa is known for. Literally, there's cats sitting on hospital, like patient seats, and the patients are standing next to them because they don't want to bother the cat. So if you love cats, it's definitely a place to go. And there's a lot of dogs as well, but they just sleep everywhere. I don't know. Anyway, it's a bit strange. There's lots of good touristic places, so like the Blue Mosque, Hagia Sophia, there's like a cistern, a lot of palaces that are really, really old, so from the Ottoman times, and there's also a lot of Roman and Greek kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for, ruins and things that are left over from their times, from the Byzantine Empire times and that. The Grand Bazaar, which probably a lot of people know about, lots of herbs, spices, souvenirs, everything's super cheap. Yeah, so this is going to be my display of lots of photos. I took this while I was on the boat. Yeah, disclaimer, they're all my pictures, so no copyright. Take a camera with you. That was Galata Tower. You get amazing views, which I'll show you another picture of soon. This was the Dolmabahce Palace. So great touristic stuff to do. It's not too expensive to get in either. You can get like a museum card, and I think it comes to about $50 to go to all the different palaces. That's a Blue Mosque. Pretty. That's Hagia Sophia, also pretty. That's the views from the tower. So that's what Istanbul looks like. You've kind of just got the river, or yeah, I think it's called the river, that runs through. That's also the palace. And this was in Antalya, so this is known as Apollo's temple. So yeah, they still have a lot of like history there if you want to go touring around. And that was Hadrian's Gate. So lots of history in Turkey because it's been conquered so many times by different people. But my actual placement, I hope I'm not running late on time. So this was my supervisor. So I got supervised, and I think they aimed to do this by the head of the department, so head of general surgery. He had a very interesting name, even for the Turks there, of Subhan. So they call everyone there Hoca, which just means teacher. So I'd call him Subhan Hoca. And it was really great. You spend a lot of time with other consultants, but you know that you're attached to this one. So if you have any questions, you can just find his office. And they do take you on a tour if you go through Turkey Electives and show you the whole campus. Unfortunately, I didn't take pictures of the campus, but it is quite large. And yeah, you only need to know what your department's like, really. That's me. That's my mom. She was really excited to walk me to hospital because she doesn't come with me. I don't know why she was excited. But anyway, you get a lot of time on theatres, clinics, ward rounds. They do formal teaching because you're with the equivalent of MD2s when you're there. Otherwise, you can spend time with the interns. It's up to you. I met a few other elective students. Some were from Azerbaijan and one was from Sydney. And she spent most of her time with interns rather than the medical students. But you get a lot of teaching while you're there. You can go to theatre whenever you want. You just go in, you sign your name, they show you where it is, and you can just walk into any theatre. They're very, very accommodating of medical students. The surgeon will literally turn and be like, students, can you see? Like, go get a step ladder so you can see this properly. I don't feel like they've got the equipment that we do here in Australia in the public healthcare system, and my supervisor did say if you went to a private one, it's a lot more high-tech, because he asked me how I found it, and I was like, it's interesting. It's kind of smaller than I was expecting, and it just feels a bit dirtier because it's so old and stuff. And apparently they are renovating the hospital, so I came at a really bad time. But yeah, it was really good. Your days are very flexible. I used to leave around, I'd start at say 8, and leave by 12, 11 a.m., 12. It's really up to you. You can spend your whole day there. You can do night shifts there. But if you just want to go to a ring around, it's a really great place because they don't expect you to stay. There's no like attendance or anything. And you get used to that at the Austin. So I like the freedom. This was what it was like. They cut out bowel cancer, and he was like, oh, send a picture to Australia, come take a picture. So I just popped it on my Snapchat. There's nothing that identifies the patient, guys. But the patient, the next day, her family actually organised a whole breakfast to be delivered to the hospital, and the surgeons that helped out in her surgery, and I thought that was super sweet, and apparently it's really common for patients and their families to do that. So I had free food almost every day, and there is endless amounts of tea. Like, you can see her in the back, she's just getting the tea ready to serve you with tea. They just kind of come around and they're like, would you like some tea? That was Aussie, Sydney elective student Celine, and that was from Azerbaijan. Yeah, so it was all like really nice. I had a good time. Pros and cons, yep, you get really good teaching and they get you to get involved, so they let you do closing up sutures and things in the theatre. They'll teach you as they're doing it, they'll explain why they're doing it in a certain way, what they're cutting out, how else you can do it, come pop the drain in and suture around it. Like, they get you really involved if you want to. They're really friendly. The language can be a barrier in the sense of their teaching is all in Turkish. So when they were doing like radiology things and that, if you don't have Turkish, that's all they're going to be speaking. Your supervisor and most of the doctors there speak English, so they will speak English to you, but when they're teaching to the other medical students, they're not going to accommodate for that. So that is one of the drawbacks, I guess. Your days are really flexible. Yeah, you get a good variety. The clinics are really weird. People just walk in, like you're seeing a patient and another patient just walks in. Like, there's no privacy the way there is in Australia. And that's kind of what I wanted to see. I wanted to see how it was different. One of the nurses was literally like, oh, doctor, while you're here, can you look at my hemorrhoids? And there's about 12 of us medical students in the same room. She's like, I'm kind of embarrassed, but hey, let's do this. And I was like, this wouldn't happen back home. It's very interesting. But yeah, oh, the coffee sucks. If you guys really are into coffee and caffeine, it's really horrible. Even Turkish coffee, they don't know how to make it. It's so bad. Just like, I was like, I make Turkish coffee. This is terrible. Drink tea, or just get those 3-in-1 Nescafe sachets and survive. The food's much better. But yeah, my verdict would be I'd definitely recommend it. If safety is a thing that you're worried about, probably not in the capital cities or like the main cities wouldn't be an issue. Don't travel down to where there's war zones and things like that. And yeah, it's just a really good experience to see something outside of the norm. And thank you. That's it.
Hey, thanks, Ada. I know that Ada's got us all thinking about food now, but before dinner, I've just got a really important talk from Hannah about how to get involved with the new High Material Aid program.
Okay. Hi everyone. Sorry, I know that I am standing between you and some pizza right now, so I'll try and make this really quick. So my name's Hannah. I'm one of the program co-coordinators of the Material Aid program. So basically, what I'm going to talk to you guys about is not anything to do with an elective, because I haven't been on one, but we are an organisation that can partner with you if you're going to go on an elective, particularly to a developing country. So to basically summarise what the material aid program does is we collect medical supplies in surplus from around Melbourne, and we have a little warehouse, not our own warehouse, but a space where we keep these supplies, and we work with you guys and the health organisations that you're going to be doing your electives with to work out what kind of medical supplies they might need. So, for example, you heard from Tessa in Fiji, for example, there are a lot of under-resourced health organisations, particularly in those rural areas that do need quite a few supplies. So we basically work with you to find out what they need, and we will pack that for you, what we can supply, and then we send that off with you guys on your trips, just through your however much leftover luggage space you have, and we sort out all the paperwork and that kind of thing, so you don't really have to worry about it. So I guess broadly our objectives are to find an alternative way for medical supplies that are thrown out basically just because there's too much of it, certain things that are technically expired but are still sterile, for example gauze, it's still okay to use. We send all of that stuff, and I'll go through a bit later what kind of supplies we do have, but we do make it very clear to the health organisations that some of our medical supplies are expired, and they will tell us exactly what they're happy to take. And it also means sometimes you as medical students will get requests from these health organisations to bring stuff over or raise money, and that minimises the resource strain on you guys. And yeah, as I said, it's completely free, easy collaboration. You just need to get in contact with us once you've confirmed your electives. So where we've gone in the past, we do have ongoing partnerships with groups, for example, here at Melbourne, the Kenyan Village Project, over at Monash, they've got Team Med where they send large groups of students overseas, but we do sometimes get individuals going on their electives with other organisations who will take stuff over for us. So you can kind of see on the map, we send things Nepal, India, Fiji, throughout Africa. So anywhere that is an under-resourced organisation, we are more than happy to help you supply some stuff over there. So yeah, this is just from somebody who went to Uganda earlier in the year, and whilst you can't, you know, obviously you're restricted by the amount of luggage space that you have, it's a really nice way to actually find a purpose for these items that would otherwise go to waste. And you can see here that the amount that we could provide for them provided medical care to 40 patients for about 5 days, which is pretty good. So I'm going to quickly go through how our process works. So we have sponsorship officers that collect donations from places like the hospitals, so Children's Hospital, RMH, we get stuff from research institutes, lots of different places, GP clinics. Then our ambassadors, which are you guys that go on your electives, need to contact us. So once you all go on your electives different times, different places, so you just need to email us and say, hey, I've confirmed my elective going at this time, how can I get on board with this? And that's when we contact you and send through a wish list of what kind of stuff we have. And it's your job to make contact, pass this on to your health organisation, make sure they fill it out. Because our big thing is that we don't want to send supplies over that aren't going to be used and aren't going to be compatible with the organisation over there. So that's really the key thing that needs to be done early on. And then our project officers go to the warehouse, pack it, and of course we try and get you guys involved as well so you understand the whole process, so you guys can come pack the stuff that you'll bring over. And then you guys go on your electives, take it with you. We do all the paperwork, no worries. And then we will follow up with an evaluation afterwards just to see if you've had any issues or, any feedback in general. So I sort of briefly mentioned our suppliers. This is not at all like an extensive list, but generally these are sort of the common things that a lot of students or health organisations request. So always need sterile gloves, examination gloves, gauze, bandages, BP monitors. So we do sometimes have semi-automatic ones. A lot of the time they're manual ones. A lot of like emergency resuscitation equipment, so bag valve masks, that sort of thing, lots of PPE, and a lot more. So our big thing is that we don't send over medications or any kind of items like pathology tubes that require additives and that kind of thing. And that's just a safety thing because we don't know how long stuff might be sitting in our warehouse for, and we really can't guarantee that sort of safety. So just keep that in mind. And whilst we do have a wish list of our items, if the hospitals do require anything specific, we can help source that. So sometimes hospitals are keen on getting, for example, there was a hospital that needed some nebulizers, and we didn't specifically have nebulizers, but we do work with some organisations that, if we ask them, can search around and find really niche things that we might not have. Okay, so basically what you need to do before you, once you've finalised your elective and you're interested in taking some medical supplies over. So really easy, you just need to contact us first. So as soon as you find out, please contact us. The earlier the better, because sometimes it can take a while to get into contact with your health organisations, especially if you're going somewhere quite remote. Emailing can be quite difficult. So contact us either via our website, so I'll have a link later on, email map@MUHI, or you can find us on Facebook and message us there. So plenty of places to contact us. Once we get back to you, you need to organise that wish list to be filled in by the health organisation. And then we'll pack the supplies for you. You guys come and collect it, and then we will do that follow-up afterwards. So it's just about contacting us really early so that we can help you out. And yeah, basically who to contact, that's our email up there. So write that down if you definitely think you're going to go on an elective, and we will try and help you out. Website, Facebook's really easy. You can look us up, Material Aid Program. And yeah, please even contact us if you haven't confirmed your elective, but you know that you definitely want to go on one and you have an idea of where. Contact us early, and we will send out a reminder email maybe couple of months before your proposed date, and we'll see if you've got something organised there. So that was really just a quick run through. You guys have dinner outside now, but we're going to have a stall table out there. So Ruin, myself, and Nadine are going to be out there. So if you want to chat to us, you can. And we'll also have a little sign-up sheet. So if you are interested in potentially taking some stuff over, we'll get your details down. And thank you very much.
I'm Mel. I'm an MB4 at the Northern. I'm a little bit nervous, so I'm just going to sit down if that's okay. So in December last year in 2018, I did a 3-week elective at Frankston Hospital with plastic surgery. So I've got a bit of a different slant on my talk than maybe the other talk. So I came along to this Electives Night 2 years ago when I was at the start of MD2. The speakers who spoke had done amazing electives, adventurous, prestigious, at all sorts of places like the United Nations, Beth Israel in New York, and other fancy places. And the reason why I wanted to speak today is because going to that Electives Night 2 years ago massively put me off doing an elective. The students who spoke had done electives that you had to apply for at least 2 years in advance, or cost thousands of dollars to apply. And after that night, I said to myself, Melanie, you're way too lazy and poor to do an elective. So I completely discounted that I would do an elective at all. But halfway through MD3, I started to realise what the benefits of doing an elective might be. It occurred to me that I was nearing the end of my clinical years and I had not actually had that much exposure to many careers in medicine. So how was I meant to figure out what I wanted to do when I'd been given so little time on different rotations? So in July of last year, just in the middle of MD3, I emailed the medical education office of pretty much every hospital in Melbourne. And I was lucky enough that Monash uni-based Peninsula Clinical School, which is Frankston Hospital, got back to me. And I decided to do an elective in plastics, pretty much because I'd had not very much exposure to it in MD2. And Frankston because I could stay with some family nearby. Emphasis on the, like, I didn't have any money to do an elective. So I had a really good time at Frankston Hospital, and I would really encourage all of you to do a local elective at some point in your medical degree. The plastics team at Frankston was really busy. A huge variety to see, from removal of skin cancers, stab wounds, carpal tunnel release, and breast reconstruction after mastectomy. Those were the most exciting things I can remember. I was scrubbing in for procedures from the first day. I was helping to assess patients in the ED, and I was seeing patients in clinic by myself and presenting to consultants. And it turned out that a lot of other MD3s were doing local electives over that summer, everywhere from Dandenong to Bendigo. And I think I'd never thought of doing a local elective because no one really talked about it. And let's be honest, it's not something that you'd share on social media, you know, with a pretty picture of yourself at Frankston Hospital kind of thing. So just for something different tonight, I'd like to present to you the case for doing a non-fancy local elective. For those of you who started your clinical years, you'll know that our time in hospital is actually really short. Yes, you might be on a team for 4 weeks, but if you're constantly running off to go to tutorials, lectures, study, or a peer tute, you're rarely able to form a relationship with a team and really see the day-to-day of the job. So on the elective, I was at every ward round at 7, and I stayed for as long as I found interesting things going on, which was usually until about 5, and then I'd go to the beach. I was on long summer holidays and I had all the time in the world to just be there. And this meant that the team could see that I was keen, so they got me involved and I got to do more. Whereas you can't really do that when you're on normal rotations and you have to run up all the time. When you're on rotation in MD2 and 3, you have very specific outcomes to gain, from finding a good long case patient to completing a logbook. On my elective, I had all the time in the world to be part of the team and do whatever I wanted. And I had more brain space to consider, what do I like about this specialty? What do I like about this job and this lifestyle? And what do I want for my own career? And because I was with the doctors all the time, I was able to get to know them and ask some questions about their pathway. And some of the things I discovered for myself was that I really liked theatre and I wanted to do a job that involves theatre. And I also realised truly how tough surgical training was, with the registrars often working so much overtime, leading to at least 90-hour weeks, which is something I hadn't realised on my surgical rotation in MD2, when you're only popping in and out sometimes, like going to theatre occasionally or going to ward rounds sometimes. Finally, an elective gives you the opportunity to spend time in a different hospital. Yes, Frankston Hospital, it's not particularly exotic in comparison to a hospital in Armenia or Vanuatu, but it gave me an experience that's helpful for my career as a doctor in Australia, because ultimately that's where I'm going to be working. Most Melbourne MD students will spend their entire clinical years at the same hospital, so it can feel like there's no place like home and you've not been anywhere else. And the Northern's kind of my home, and I really like the friendly and relaxed culture, but then it turns out that Frankston's cool as well, and it's closer to my extended family in the beach, so, you know, some pros there. Spending time in a different hospital can help you decide what you value in a workplace and where you might like to work. And also, crucially, if you're in the later years, it gives you an opportunity to get a reference from a consultant at that hospital for your internship application. So have a think about doing a local elective where you might want to work someday. So I'd highly encourage you all to do a local elective. If I haven't convinced you enough, let me tell you one more quick story. When I was on elective in Frankston, a friend called me. She'd just done an overseas elective and she was considering cancelling a local elective she was also going to do that summer. Fair enough, like you're spending your whole summer doing electives. And she asked me about my experience in Frankston so far, and I told her pretty much what I've told you all today, and I asked how her elective had been. She told me that she'd spent most of her elective travelling, fair enough, because the actual elective itself had been involved, that it involved being on a ward round with 15 other international medical students on elective. So pretty much this hospital had an elective program pretty much just to make money. So she had a tour of the hospital trailing behind 20 people every day, but she hadn't really learned anything. So I don't think this is the experience that anyone wants to have. Thanks for listening. Feel free to ask any questions. That's it. Yeah, go for it.
Where did your friend go?
Sorry?
Where did your friend go?
Sri Lanka. Like, I don't think you can judge a whole country based on this one experience, but like, the thing is, when you go on elective overseas, you have no idea what the experience is going to be and what the sort of motive is for providing that elective. Yeah. So don't like not go to Sri Lanka just because of that one story, but just saying you don't know what it's going to be like until you get there. Any other questions? All right, cool, thanks.
Hey guys, so our next speaker here is Lily, who's done 2 electives, one here locally in Dandenong Hospital and the other one in the Christian Medical College in Vellore, India. I'll pass you over.
Yep.
Hey guys, I won't take too much of your time hopefully. This is my first electives night in my med degree because I wasn't really keen on going to an elective, but I ended up doing 2 somehow. I guess during MB3 I thought may as well try and do something, and I heard about local electives, and then I booked the first one, and then later on I thought I'd do another one. So here I am. So yeah, the first one, I was talking to Mel about it actually in December. We were both doing the same time. We're like, oh, it would be good to go to electives night to tell people that you don't really have to go travel far to do a good elective. So here we are. So I went to Dandy Hospital through Monash Health for 2 weeks in December. Did Gen Med because I'm like, we'll see a bit of everything, I guess. And it's good to sort of see a different system at Monash compared to Melbourne, and just to revise, because I knew that when I went to research this year that I wasn't going to see much med, so it'd be good to sort of revise things before I go into internship. And also it's very convenient because I live in Endeavour Hills, so if you know where that is, it's like a long distance away from here, but it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes from Dandy, so it was very nice to wake up at 8 o'clock and still get there in time for an 8:30 meeting, whereas here I have to wake up at like 6:30. And yeah, and the best thing was it was free. So for local medical students, elective through Monash is free. So get on to it. Yeah, my experience was very worthwhile. I felt like included as part of the team because I was the only medical student there. Because who else does med in December? Like everyone else is on holidays. I learned a lot because the consultant was very happy to teach and give me homework and read up on this. And I guess it's up to you as well if you want to do it or not. But I did, and I guess I got more out of it. Because I guess, they make you feel welcome, so you sort of feel like you want to do the work as well. So it was good in that way. And the thing with Dandy is there's not as many specialties as the big hospitals here. So Gen Med wasn't just COPD and heart failure. There was some of that as well, but there was a good variety of neuro and gastro patients as well, who they initially work up in Gen Med, and then after a few days they sort of divide them up and send them to the other wards when they have space for them. So that was good. Yeah, I got to talk to patients, examine them, and then present them on rounds and stuff. Practical skills for internships. I guess a couple of my friends were actually interns at Monash. It was good to sort of see them again as well. And they sort of got me involved. So writing notes and stuff, which some hospitals through Melbourne don't let you do. I go to St. V's where we're not really allowed to write notes. We still do sometimes, but we're not really allowed to. So I got to do that at Monash, got to practice doing referrals. I'm pretty scared of talking to people on the phone, like honest mates. It's good to sort of be put on the spot to call like some random specialist and say, can we refer this patient? So that was a good experience, I guess, for next year, because we don't really get taught these things in med school, but you have to do it from day one at internships. So it's good to sort of practice that a bit. And then procedures as well, like did a few bloods here and there, helped out with a catheter, and did my first ever large biopsy, which is a big thing for me, I guess. So it's good to get the exposure there, I guess. And they were more happy to let me do those things there, which I haven't really experienced at the big hospitals here. I saw my first ever proper med call as well. One of the patients on our team was fine in the morning, and then suddenly, sort of deteriorated, GCS dropped a bit. And it was really cool to sort of see how many different people rushed there right away, and just to see how it was sort of organised chaos. You sort of hear about it, but when you actually see it, it's an experience in its own. A few family meetings, so like a couple of like end of life care, so like a couple of palliative care patients. So they didn't have a specific team, so like they were sort of also under Gen Med. So it was interesting to see the conversations that were had and how the consultant really went about breaking bad news, which can be an OSCE station for some of you guys. So it's good to sort of see that once in a while. And the good thing about Dandy is, yes, I was on Gen Med, but they asked me the first day, they were like, what do you want to get out of this? And they offered me the opportunity to go to a refugee health clinic. And that's something I'm passionate about. So it's really good to just go and see how that is. That's unique to Dandy. So it's good to have that opportunity. But overall, it was a very fun and supportive team. Felt really included and had a really good time. In terms of the application process, the website there. Again, get onto it quickly because it fills up. So these are the available options for this year. So I think I initially wanted to do ED at Dandy or like Heme Onc at Clayton, but both of them didn't get back to me in time. Gen Med was the first one to get back to me, so I locked it in. But yeah, if you email one of these people and then once they are happy to, then you can fill the relevant forms out. And if it takes a little while to fill the forms out, you need a letter from your dean as well. But it doesn't take too long, so just like look at the website and if you're interested, right? See how that goes. Yeah, if you have any questions, let me know as well. So that was the first elective. Any questions about that? All right, I'll move on. So I didn't think Dandy would need a map, but I think India might. So I went to south of India, so to Vellore, which is Tamil Nadu. I did 3 weeks there. So I did 1 week each of Gen Med again, oncology, because I'm interested in oncology, and CHAD, which is a community health program. So I think with electives, there's plenty of different reasons why you want to go. So I guess my one at Dandy was more about learning and sort of learning like practical skills for internship, whereas India was more about the experience of it and sort of seeing how different things would be compared to here. So I guess you got to sort of think what you want to do before you go into elective. So this is why I went to India, I guess, and just to see the different conditions which are unique there. It was a really good 3 weeks, and just really good to sort of see how different things are there. Like a very eye-opening experience, because a big thing there was that the lack of money, and that's a limiting factor for patients. So although they had the facilities to provide great care, if the patient can't really afford it, it's sort of a big barrier there, which we sort of take things for granted here sometimes, and you sort of realize when you go to places like India or other sort of places there, which we also heard about in the first half. A disclaimer is that there's a bit of a language barrier. So I speak Tamil, so it was fine for me, but the main language spoken by patients is Tamil, or a few other Indian languages like Hindi and stuff. So it'll be more beneficial if you can. But having said that, there's about 20 of us there in total, like overall from different places, parts of the world, students. And I was the only one who spoke the language, and everyone seemed to have a great time. So it doesn't really matter because the doctors are happy to teach and in English, obviously, and like get you involved regardless. So I don't think you have to know the language, but if you are of Indian or Sri Lankan background and speak the language, definitely recommend. But even if not, still definitely recommend. The first week in Gen Med, as I said, like the high patient load was something we don't see here, and the high turnover of patients. You see a whole variety. I thought Dandy had a variety of patients, and I got to India and it was just like TB, scrub typhus, things I've never heard in my life, all under Gen Med. There was no palliative care ward, so like that, a lot of palliative care patients who were put into Gen Med because there's nowhere else to go. And every day you go to a ward round, and there's like 15, 20 new patients there. Where do they come from? Where do yesterday's patients go? It's quite chaotic. And interns there, like I think next year I have a bit more perspective now. Like next year will be tough, but nothing compared to what they have to deal with there. Like they get paid like nowhere near what we paid. They're there. Like one of the interns there, she said her actual house is about half an hour from where the hospital is, and she hadn't been there in 3 months because they got like 2 or 3 days off only in 3 months, and they're there like non-stop. So obviously they live on campus, and they're overworked, and yeah, it was a really good eye-opening experience for me. And grand rounds there. So first day I went to a grand round. I thought it was like an lecture theatre like this, like what we have. And a grand round is literally a grand round, like 30 people, like 10 different consultants all go together to see every single patient on the ward. I didn't really learn much because like the registrar kept getting grilled, and like after the 5th patient, he just started getting quieter and quieter. So I didn't really learn much out of it. It was just a good experience to be part of a grand round. And yeah, most doctors are happy to teach. They're not as nice to their juniors, but they're very nice to you. So it's sort of good to see a bit of both. I didn't do any surgical training, but I heard it can get a bit nasty in surgery. Like they're pretty rude towards nurses and towards their juniors. I'm glad I didn't experience any of that myself, but I heard stories. So if you're interested in surge, it's something you might just have to keep an eye out for. And OPD is like the outpatients clinic there. So that was like one of my first few days there. And outpatients for us is like, you know, one patient per room standard, right? I got there, like a normal this size room, and it was like one table in each corner. And then after a while, like there was like a spot for 2 doctors at each table. So there'd be 2 consults at each, so there'd be 8 consults in the room at one time. So what is privacy, what is confidentiality? And then like the next few patients would be like waiting in line, like trying to rush in, like they're at the market, like, oh, when are you going to see me? And it was just like really chaotic, but it's just because such a high amount of patients there that have to be, there's no other way. So it's interesting to see how different it is to here again. And again, there's a whole range of different conditions, a lot of TB. I need to do my quantiferin test again, I reckon. Okay. And then, yeah, secondly was in oncology. So I did the private and public. The private is very similar to here, but the public was just like one big room with like 15 patients. And I said, there's no designated care ward. And I guess, as I said before, the lack of money is a big limiting factor. And I guess you sort of see, and also another thing is like the lack of health literacy sometimes. So there's a patient who had testicular cancer who came to outpatients. He had pulmonary metastasis. So in October, this was his x-ray, so you can see a few spots there. And I think he was lost to follow-up, or for 3 months he didn't rock up, didn't come to treatment. So he came into clinic in January with a bit of a hemoptysis. And the doctor there did an x-ray and sort of a lot worse. And testicular cancer is one of the cancers when they have a really high cure rate. Even if they have metastases, you can treat it. But the fact that he didn't understand how serious it was, he's like, oh, I was busy with family and things. But, you know, he didn't understand how grave the situation was. And it was just quite sad to see. And this was very common there. Like, people don't understand, like, what their state of disease is like and what to do about it. And the last week I spent in Chad. So Chad is an initiative they run, which is, I think, a very good idea. So, like, they go out to rural villages and provide sort of free or cheaper healthcare. So there's 82 small villages under their scheme. And each village gets, once a month, gets this mobile clinic. So we'll go out in a van and then set up, you know, it's pretty nice atmosphere now, under a tree, like something different to here. And patients just come there with their complaints. A lot of it's like uncontrolled hypertension and diabetes, so chronic disease management. But even there, like, they don't really understand. And one of the patients, like, oh, doctor, like, yeah, I have sugar, like diabetes, they call it sugar. But, you know, like, my sugar was fine, so I stopped the medication. So they think like diabetes is like a headache. You know, you take a medication, it goes away. They don't understand that you've got to keep taking the medication until to keep it controlled. So I guess that's a good experience. Again, this was from Google Images. Like, I didn't take a picture, but this is what it would have been like inside the van. So they had antenatal care as well provided in the van. But that was basically the elective itself. But outside of the elective, like, I stayed at the international hostel. A lot of others from like Sydney, New Zealand, Norway, all over the world. And a really good time with them all. Like, just grab dinner together. You can go out to local places. The food's really cheap there. On the weekends, you have the opportunity to travel if you want. I didn't, because I already travelled like with my family beforehand, so I was pretty sick of travelling. But there's the option to travel nearby to a lot of beachy areas. A few of my friends went to Bangalore to watch the cricket match, which was also a nice experience. So a lot of options there. Also, I guess either before or after the elective, you should always also consider traveling, like to North India or like to south of Kerala. So we went to Kerala. It was a really lovely time there. So the options there. If you want to fly all the way to India, you may as well make a holiday out of it as well. In terms of application, that's the email address. So Sheila, she works at the principal's office there. She's amazing. She'll sort you out. In terms of costs, so the Medical Council of India, they charge an application fee, and they take a while to get back to you. So get onto it early. And there's a few other fees like registration fees, and each week there's like $60, I think. It might seem like a lot, but compared to a lot of other international electives, it's not too bad. But again, it's up to you how you go about it. The student visa also takes a bit of time to get sorted, so get onto that early. I learned the mistake by leaving it late. I had a bit of a hassle during exam time, but got it sorted eventually. And accommodation, once you book the elective, they'll contact you. It's a lot cheaper than what Michael and stuff were saying about their ones, less than $10 a day. So, yeah, and the cost of living is quite cheap there as well. I guess it's general advice in terms of electives. Some people do go up to MD1, but I recommend waiting till the end of MD2 or MD3, because I guess that way you sort of got more knowledge behind you and you probably get more out of it. Because when I was over in India, like a few people came from UQ, and they hadn't even done any clinical years yet. So they weren't really getting much out of it. Like, it was good to see things, but they didn't really get much learning out of it. Whereas if you go in MB3, MB2, because the doctors have time to teach you, but they don't have time to go into detail. So if you have a bit of knowledge, it's easy to pick things up. So I'd recommend going then. Decide what you want. Like, as you can see with an elective, there's so many different options out there. You can choose something just to learn if you want to, like Dandy was for me. You can choose somewhere you want to travel. You can choose something for your CV if you want to. That's perfectly fine. But decide what you want and then choose your elective based on that. Because it's your money, your time, so may as well spend it doing what you want to do. Plan early, as I said, and then when you get there, just make the most of it. You're there, you may as well get involved, ask questions, travel if you're around, and yeah, have a good time. Any questions, let me know. If not, just find me on Facebook or you can get my email address. Yeah, I'm good.
Thanks so much, Stevie. I want to press the wrong thing.
Okay, so next we've got Katie speaking from Bank of Queensland, one of our sponsors tonight.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, hi everyone. My name's Katie. I'm from Bank of Queensland Specialist. For anyone who doesn't know who Bank of Queensland Specialist is, we're a private bank for doctors, dentists, and vets. So you may be kind of wondering, you've heard a lot about the electives and things like that, how you're going to fund the elective. We've got a few different options for you, and I'll briefly go over those today. This slide's a little bit longer probably than we have time for, so I'll be flicking through some of them pretty quickly. Firstly, what I always like to kind of highlight is to ask your current bank that you're with what they're doing for you, or sometimes what they're not doing for you in terms of interest rates, fees, things like that. We have quite high interest rates that we can offer students, and no fees on any of our accounts either, which is awesome. Just quickly, show of hands, penultimate and final year students in the room right now? Okay, a couple of them. So as you progress through your career, or well, through your student career anyways, we have different options that we can offer you. Younger students, you can look at transactional accounts. Once you hit penultimate, as of July 1st of your penultimate year, and final year, you can look at overdrafts and credit cards, which can be quite helpful as well for helping fund your elective. So one of the accounts that we have that is available to everyone is an Everyday Plus account. This pays you in frequent flyer points if you're interested in that. I won't go into too much detail about it, but you earn one either Qantas or Velocity point on every $10 of daily average in the account. We are running a promotion with this account as well, that if you sign up for it, tap your card 10 times in 3 months, you get a bonus 5,000 points. Student banking package is what your penultimate and final year students are going to be interested in. The way that this can especially help you with your elective, we offer an overdraft. Is there anyone who knows what an overdraft is or how that works at all? No? That's totally fine. One of the benefits also with coming through BOQ Specialist is you do get your private banker, which is me. So if you have any questions about how accounts work, you just have no clue, what it is, that's what I can help educate you on. So with the overdraft account, this one, penultimate year, again, as of July 1st of your penultimate year, you can sign up for a max of $7,000. Final year, you're eligible for $10,000. With the overdraft, you get, we offer you a decreased interest rate. So typically in the market, you're going to see overdraft accounts at 10.54%. And you can think of the overdraft as basically a loan. We offer it to you at 7.64%, and you don't have to make any repayments on that account until July 1st of your internship year. So you can use those funds towards booking flights, accommodation, anything like that. With the credit card as well, we bundle this in with the student package. You can sign up for a limit of up to $6,000. Credit card's a bit more strict than the overdraft though. Payments are right away every month. We cannot look to defer them at all. What some students like to do are run their daily living expenses through their credit card and then use the overdraft to help pay it off. With the credit card, you get Velocity and Qantas frequent flyer points. If you book any flights on the credit card, you have free travel insurance. There's no paperwork that you need to fill out with that or anything like that, so that can be really beneficial if you're booking your elective flights on it. We also offer you this card free for 5 years. So typically, we charge $150 per annum on the Qantas, or sorry, not the Qantas, on the Platinum credit card. We waive that for you for 5 years, which is a great discount. And we'll skip that. Caroline, don't worry about that. Now, this is probably the most beneficial thing, or the best thing, I guess, that I'm going to talk about. We run a grant specifically for electives called the Future Focus. So we give away 5 of these per year, and what it is, it's $2,500. $2,000 goes towards you and your travel, accommodation, anything that you need. Then you get to choose how you spend $500 in the community that you're with. This could be medical supplies, donating it to research, whatever it is that you think that the community that you're in needs the most. That's up to you. You also get a GoPro to help document your experience, and you get to keep that at the end. So that's yours. We don't want that back. With the Future Focus, you also, this is eligible for anyone leaving on elective between October this year and October next year. So you need to enter, you need to be on your elective in that window, and we open up applications of May. So that's just around the corner. If you like our Facebook page, which is called Pulse, it will give you a lot of updates about when the application's opening, how to do it, and it's actually quite easy. So if anyone is like Melanie, who is poor and lazy, this one is a really good option for you. Well, that's what I hear from everyone. They're like, I just don't want to apply for it because I don't want to do a 20-page questionnaire or something like that, and I have no money. So this one is good because it's only 5 questions, and it's pretty much just what you're doing in your community, what you hope to achieve, different things like that. I recommend anyone applying for this to really put a lot of effort into it though. We do get quite a decent amount of applications with it, but don't let that deter you. I personally and a few other people actually read all of them. We don't just go, this one's the longest, we'll take this one. We do go through them individually, and we have a whole team that votes on them and decides, who's going to get it. So again, we give away 5, so definitely have a look. It opens up in May. And that is all I have for you. Any questions? Oh, actually, hold on, I have one more thing, and it's free money. So anyone that went into the drawing for the $100 gift card, I'm going to draw that quickly, and you can, take that home tonight. Oh, I cannot read this person's handwriting at all, sorry. Oh. It could be either an X or a Y, I-N-E. X or Y? No? Yeah, it's not. I did tell everyone, I'm like, you have to be present. If you try and skip out, I'm not chasing you down. Emily's son. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Katie, for letting us know about those services. So our next speaker is Laura. She went to Lima, Peru, and she did her elective at the Sergio E. Benales Hospital, and there she worked with Partners in Health.
Sorry, Andy. I just have to go to birthing shift after this, so just to flag, I'll probably leave straight after this, so if you have questions, ask it now, or I'll put my email up there as well.
So I did my elective in Lima in Peru with an NGO called Socios en Salud that is kind of the affiliate partner of Partners in Health, which is based primarily in the States. And through that, I was based clinically at a hospital called Sergio y Bernales, which is in pretty much the poorest district of Lima, which is about 2 hours from the city centre, but still counts as Lima. So I thought I'd give a bit of information about Socios en Salud. So it's a partner association with Partners in Health. It was founded by Paul Farmer, Ophelia Dow, who's fun fact Dow's daughter, and Jim Kim, who's now the head of World Bank. And they started Socios en Salud as well because it was one of the biggest areas that they found with MDR and XDR TB. So for those that are not clinical, multi-drug resistant, extremely drug resistant TB. And that was kind of where Socios en Salud came out of. This is my team, and this is Paul Farmer, who I met. So essentially, I was not working on TB, although that's what the Facebook post said, sorry. I was working on helping with a research project that was run through Harvard University, and Socios en Salud and Partners in Health pretty much have all their research done through Harvard University because that's where Paul Farmer heads up the social global equity division of Harvard or something like that. So I was working on a research that was based clinically, and the research itself was a quality improvement research, so essentially trying to increase access to surgical care. And they did that through looking at the triaging process and seeing how they could improve the way that they triage the patients, because essentially previously the patients would come to the door and knock and ask for a bed, whereas they're like, no, we'll call you, which sounds like a pretty good idea. So essentially my role was doing interviews with the patients to see how they got triaged and the satisfaction with both the quality of the triaging process as well as their surgical care. I also looked through all the operating room logbooks, chatted to all the doctors, did a mediation of like the beds on the wards and the surgeries that were done as well. We also gave a presentation to the board at Sergio y Bernales' surgical team. I don't have a photo of the hospital, but this is a stray dog in the middle of the hospital ward. Okay. Oh no, that's not what I wanted. So I was based clinically in Hospital Sergio y Bernales in their surgical department, and it's pretty much services the poorest area of Lima, and it's a very, very, very under-resourced hospital. Lima itself is not necessarily an under-resourced city, but this particular hospital is extremely under-resourced. It is very well known in Lima for being the hospital that you go to that you never come out of because you pretty much die in the hospital. That was their reputation. That's why Socios en Salud decided to work with this hospital to try and improve their care. Aside from the research that I did with Partners in Health, which is essentially a 10 a.m. to 3 p.m, kind of I could pick my time as long as I got all the work done. Because I was in the surgical department all the time, I started chatting to all the doctors, I went on their ward rounds. They got to know me pretty well because I was there a lot, so they started inviting me to theatre, to scrub in. I did a couple overnight stints in the ED with them as well, because that's essentially the best time to see where they're most under-resourced and where I guess is the main sticking point for them, which was pretty cool. Got to see lots of stuff that is obviously not presentations that you see in Melbourne, Australia, and a lot of very poor care because of the lack of resources that they have, not because the doctors don't know better. The things like not having sterile gloves, not having a sterile field. They know they should have one, they just can't physically have the resources to do it. This is the slum area in the hills. That is the view when you sit in the hospital. So other things Socios en Salud does, like I said, it's a huge centre for MDR and XDR TB, which is probably the bulk of the work that they do. They have this program called Acompañantes, where you go up and you see each person take their TB medication as like a docs directly observed treatment kind of thing. So they literally go up into the slums every day to go see their patients that are extremely drug resistant, have to take like 1 million pills that has 1 million side effects, to make sure that they're taking it and to record the progress on it. Obviously, being in Lima, Peru, you don't go there and you don't go traveling. So lots of really cool stuff, lots of really good hiking. Lima is the #1 food city in the world. Didn't know that when I got there. They have like 3 restaurants in the top 5 restaurants in the world. This is the guinea pig that I ate. It was actually very tasty. Hiking, turtles, waterfalls. Yeah, it was very, very cool. And I would definitely suggest taking time to travel there, around that area, if you haven't already. So in terms of the details, cash money, the flights are about $1,400. Accommodation was about $15 to $20 a night, but I left mine super late. I stayed in an Airbnb in pretty much one of the most affluent areas of Lima, which I'll go into a bit later. Food is about $10 a day for breakfast, lunch and dinner combined. Travel as you wish, experience priceless. I won't go into too much detail about accommodation, transport and the nitty gritty unless you're actually thinking of going, because it's probably not useful for everyone, but this is my email here. phung@student.unimel.edu.au, because you don't get a lot of support from Sources in Salud because they're a very low resource NGO and you're working in a very low resource area. They just don't have the personnel to help you out. So if you do want to go, shoot me an email and I can walk you through. So pros and cons. Pros is really good to see on the ground NGO work. I think working at an NGO in a developed country like ours is very different than working in a grassroots organisation NGO versus working in an NGO that is both grassroots but also part of a larger picture, and that's what Sources in Salud is. So that's really good also to see, everyone always worries about, am I going to be the white saviour when I go on elective in like a developing country, and how they navigate that, especially working with such a prestigious organisation like Harvard who feeds all this stuff through them and who they essentially get money for. Cool new friends. Not only the doctors at the hospital were super nice, but also because Sources in Salud is so closely linked with Harvard, there's a lot of people who come to Sources in Salud to research that are Fulbright scholars, they're Harvard researchers, etc., etc. So you get this really good group of people that are all very global health minded and want to do really good work in that space. So just to be able to talk to them and make those connections and have them as friends, I think is super useful. Most of the people that go to Sources in Salud actually stay there for a year from Harvard. So they would think that you're coming over. I went over for 6 weeks. They would think you're coming over there. They're like, oh, that's so little time. And I was like, oh, it's a long time for me, but that's cool. Obviously, medicine in a low resource setting, you kind of learn a lot about the realities of, there's kind of the idea that, oh, this is just how they do things because they don't know better, they can't do better, whereas there's a lot of different factors and you see that when you're actually working on the ground. And obviously, pro being Peru, great food, great nightlife, great travels. Cons, you must speak Spanish. I did an undergraduate in Spanish and I've gone on exchange, so I did speak a fairly good level of Spanish. The people in Sources in Salud, some speak English, most of the work is done in Spanish. People at the hospitals might say 1 or 2 words in English, but they will all speak Spanish. All the patients speak Spanish. So if you don't speak Spanish, it would be really, really, really difficult. There was a guy from Harvard who was working on the same research that ended up leaving that project because he didn't have a good enough level. So that's actually really important and probably a big barrier. You must be really independent. Like I said, very low resource. You kind of have to figure everything out on your own, including what you're doing, where you're doing it, your accommodation, everything. They're helpful, but they don't have time to step you through everything. Must be really flexible. I was actually coming over to work on a TV project. They needed someone on this surgical project, so they moved me there instead. Lima is actually a very dangerous city, being a capital city in a developing country. Peru itself is quite economically good, but being that central conglomerate, lots of people go there from the countryside to find work. They don't get work, they're unemployed, so there's a lot of delinquency and stuff like that. So reality is it is quite dangerous, which is why I ended up living in an affluent area, just because of the realities of it. Like no one gets in a taxi because you will get robbed or raped or worse. Like that's a reality of living in Lima, and that's what all the locals do as well. best to go for an extended period just to get your feet in there. Like I said, most people go for a year, so their projects and their expectations, they're used to people going for extended amounts of time. It's kind of expensive. I didn't realise that all the other electives had like sort of application processes. I literally emailed, I found like their email online. I was like, hey, you guys sound cool. Can I come hang? And they emailed back and were like, yeah, sure. So I had to send a CV and do like a Skype chat, but there's no formal application process at all. Yeah. I think this is a meme I made. So I did this presentation at my end of my term, so in summer. But it was like what I believe I'm doing, what my family thinks I'm doing, what my friends think I'm doing, and what I'm actually doing. Just trying to read this shitty doctor's handwriting in a language that I half understand. I want to do a quick plug, which is a little bit self-interested because I'm helping to write it. But I remember when I was going on exchange, I had a lot of concerns about the white saviour thing. This is a global healthcare delivery short course that is being run by Maitri Gunatwaki and has speakers like Waleed Ali, Paul Konasarov, who's the head of the Adult Physicians Board, and Susan Cullen. So this is my email here again if you want more info. Are there any questions? Cool.
Thank you. So next up we have Andy, who completed 2 electives, one in South Africa and one in the UK. So yeah, please welcome Andy.
Great, thanks. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'll try and keep it brief. I'm aware of the time. If you're interested in any of the things I talk about, just come and speak to me afterwards or send me a message, that's fine. So I'm just going to go through, I've done 2 sort of electives. I did one between MD 2-3. I went to the UK and spent 4 weeks on the air ambulance in Essex there. And then over the last summer holidays, I spent 7 weeks in South Africa and split my time between Cape Town and Joburg doing a 4-week and 3-week elective in those 2 places. So firstly, in January 2018, I was in Essex, which is about an hour-and-a-half drive out of London, on the air ambulance there. So I actually came to the Electives Night when I was in MD1 and heard about some students who'd done the same elective. Actually, it was a group of students, 3 of them went and did it together, which is probably not a bad idea. I did it on my own. So this is a brief video of they do.
755 Norfolk Radio to reach 25, it's runway 20 right hand circuit, QH 101.
And a 21-year-old female cyclist has been hit by a car. I'm afraid I've got any other details, so we're sketchy.
Starting and we'll call for lift in a minute, 55.
I've got 999 time of 10:32.
10:32 for 999. Thank you, we're on our way.
Yeah. Pretty dramatic.
David 55, we lifted from North Wales 10:35. With an ETA to scene of 11 minutes, 1 minute.
it's like. There we go. So in terms of the experience itself, they have a maximum of 4 students on placement at a time, split between 2 airfields. And the way it works in the UK is each sort of county has their own charity that runs their air ambulances. So you apply to individual counties rather than a collective air ambulance organisation. So not all of them take student elective placements, but Essex and Herts does, and I think London used to. I'm not sure if they still do, but there are a couple of charities that do take elective students. So because you've got multiple students at a time, you only have 2 or 3 flying shifts a week, and some of those might be on a weekend. And so on a flying shift, you either got like an early morning start or a late morning into the early evening time. And typically we had about 4 or 5 jobs a day. Some of them would get called back en route. But yeah, typically about 4 or 5. A lot of motor vehicle accidents, trauma, cardiac arrest, workplace accidents, stuff like that. So the crew would be a pilot and co-pilot, paramedic and a pre-hospital doctor, generally an anaesthetist, trauma surgeon or emergency physician. And then once we got on scene, as a student, you'd be doing things as directed by the paramedic and the doctor. So bagging patients if they were having cardiac arrest, or helping to splint patients if they'd had a traumatic fracture or something like that. So things that are not too demanding or take too much responsibility as a student, because it's obviously pretty time critical and an important sort of period of time, and there's not a lot of room for teaching at the time. So that mainly came during the debrief afterwards, but they definitely did get you involved, and they briefed you on the way to the job and told you what your role was going to be on scene. And then we'd either transport patients to hospital via road if it was deemed that they're stable enough to transport via road. So the paramedic, pre-hospital doctor and yourself would get in the ambulance and go to the hospital with them, or if they were critical, you take them via the chopper. In terms of logistics, I applied initially about 9 months before I wanted to go, and they were already full at the time. So I applied 12 months. I applied for the next year and did that about 12 months in advance. So the December before, like December 2016, to go in January 2018, and was successful then. The air ambulance in Essex has 2 airfields, which are about 40 minutes apart by driving. So really the only way you can get around going to both airfields is to hire a car. I actually stayed in Airbnb upstairs sort of room in a family home, which was very close to one airfield, and rode a bike when I was at that airfield. And then when I was at the one further away, I'd hire a car just for those days. I've got the website here. If you search Essex and Herts Air Ambulance student elective, you'll find that same website. It's not too arduous in terms of applying. You really just need to provide a CV and reason for applying, and if there's room availability when you want to go, they'll just ask you for a letter of confirmation of study from your university, which isn't too hard to obtain. So that was that, and if you want to ask me more questions about that, you can later on. Then over the last summer holidays, I spent 7 weeks in South Africa, and initially had 4 weeks in Cape Town doing an elective in peds surgery at Red Cross War Memorial Children's Hospital, which is just out of the centre of Cape Town, and it's the main paediatric hospital, tertiary paediatric hospital there. And so reasonable size. We had a 30-bed ward for the general surgery unit, and our days were typically 7 in the morning till around 5 in the afternoon, but you might stay later if there was emergency surgery cases. You were welcome to go in on the weekends as well, but there wasn't really that much of a, or there was definitely no expectation to, and there was a lot of sightseeing to do in Cape Town. So they kind of encourage you to go and make the most of your time in Cape Town and go and explore that. So elective theatre had lists most weekdays, and emergency lists every day. There's a shutdown period over Christmas, New Year. So if you're trying to go over those summer holidays for us, just be aware that this hospital, I'm sure a couple of others, probably quieten down in terms of the patient load they have over that period, and will only kind of have emergency cases, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It gives you a bit more time to explore. And then the period just before Christmas and after New Year was definitely quite busy. Yeah, and they were more than happy to have you in theatre every day. Actually, another benefit was going at a time when their medical students were on holiday, so they had a lot more time to dedicate teaching to yourself. and you had a lot more exposure and experience in theatre because you weren't competing with all the medical students that would normally be on placement there. So in terms of logistics, I was a little bit fortunate. My MDRP supervisor for my research project in fourth year actually had contacts in both Cape Town and Joburg. So I organised my electives about 6 months in advance. I just looked online now, and for Red Cross, their applications for 2020 are now full, but 2021, their applications haven't opened yet. So if you don't have contacts that can help you get placements, probably the earliest time you go is 2021. So I was definitely fortunate in that regard. Regardless of when you go, you need to fill out a generic application form. The hospital's affiliated with the University of Cape Town, so you fill out an enrolment form, which just has details of basic sort of personal details about yourself. And then in terms of actually doing a placement as a medical student, you need to fill out what's called the Health Professions Council of South Africa's student elective form. And there's a patient contact option or an observer option. So if you're going in MD after MD 2 or 3 and you want to have a hands-on experience, which I'd highly recommend, I think Vivi mentioned earlier, I think you get a lot more out of your electives if you go after MD2 or MD3 when you've got some clinical exposure. It is a little bit more expensive, but it definitely gives you a much better experience and you definitely get a lot more out of the elective. However, there is an option to be an observer where you don't have patient contact, but I think if you're coming out of MD1 trying to do it, it would be an option and it's definitely cheap. So I was actually accommodated in the doctors and nurses quarters, which are on site, and that was very cheap. It was about $40 per week, I think. So I was quite fortunate. Again, that was over Christmas, New Year, so it was not too busy. I think if you're going in other times, it might be harder to get space in that place. And yeah, it was about a 15-minute drive from the centre of Cape Town. Then after that, I went straight to Joburg and did 3 weeks at the Kriasani Baragwanath Academic Hospital, which is actually the 3rd largest hospital in the world. It's got 3,400 beds and it is spread over a massive area. So there's only 1 or 2 multi-storey buildings. A lot of them are just single-storey building. Each ward's like its own single-storey building. So I racked up a lot of steps for those couple of weeks. So you definitely get fit. So I mainly did trauma and burns there. Long days. The staff were very friendly and really integrated you well into the team. Again, I think an advantage being that I was there at a time when there was no other medical students from Joburg over there, so I had a lot more time to dedicate to myself. I had the opportunity to do multiple on-call shifts and had places for you to stay while you did those shifts, and that was a real benefit, and probably some of the best experiences I got out of that elective was doing those on-call shifts with one of the regs and a consultant there actually. Definitely busier than Cape Town in terms of the amount of theatre lists that was going on, and they were quite happy and encouraged you to go to all the teaching that they had on offer for their registrars. In terms of the logistics of this elective, the hospital itself was in a bit of a dangerous area in Joburg, so I was kind of recommended to not stay nearby, but was recommended to stay in a town about 20-25 minutes away. So I got an Airbnb cottage there in a gated community, and then one of the consultants or registrars arranged to pick me up and drop me off each day, which worked fine. And similar to when I was in Cape Town, application form goes through the university that's affiliated with the hospital, and then there's the same Health Professions Council South Africa form that you got to fill out, which is standardised across the country. And yeah, that was pretty much how I did my elective there. Similar to Cape Town, I think you probably need to apply about 12 months in advance if you're trying to go there now. I was, again, lucky that I had my MDRP supervisor help to arrange it, but in general, I think it'll be about 12 months if you're looking to arrange that. If you've got any further questions about any of those 3 things, please just get in touch, come and see me afterwards, or there are my details if you want to email me or give me a call or message me on Facebook. Thanks.
Great, so that brings us to the end of the evening. A big thank you to all of our speakers tonight for giving such great talks and being so generous with your time as well. I'm sure everyone's come away with many more ideas about where to do our electives and also the skills that we're hoping to learn from them. Thank you to Hannah, Catherine and Katie as well. Also really lucky to have a great arms team this year, bringing this event together. So Jillian and Lee, our sponsorship team, Tianshu and Ryan, our IT officers, and everyone on my education team as well. Thank you so much for all the hard work you've put into tonight. So James, Em, Kelly, Bonnie, Sue and Monica. And thank you for everyone for coming, and I hope you enjoyed your evening. Thanks everyone.